Hey guys, hope you guys are doing well. As you all know, I just released a brand new EP with my boy Retrosonic on Ambious Records. And myself and the gents thought it would be a good idea to break down one of the tracks on the EP. And for the sake of this tutorial, I've decided to go through the third track, which is Take It. And as you can see, the project file is open right now. And the song sounds like this. Alright, if you haven't heard the full song yet, make sure you go check it out. The link is in my bio on all social media platforms. Anyways, without further ado, let's jump right in. The first thing we did with this song is we decided to look for some vocals which could match and fit the theme of the first song and the second song, Mercury and Runaway. The vocals on their own sound like this. And the place we found the vocals in the Tropical House pack, and I believe it was number 14, which sounds like this. Alright, which is cool. Our song is in G minor, so the sample is in the right key. However, we wanted to tweak it to give it our own character, of course, and not just use it as it is. The processing we did on the vocals was we first decided to change the formant of it, the pitch, just to give it some more character. Obviously, this on its own doesn't sound that great. I mean, it sounds nice, but you know, it's not unique enough. So what we did was, there's two samples. There's one original one, which is our original signal. The processing on that looks like this. We added a bit of EQ to roll off the low end, to give space for the sub bass and as well as the low end instruments. Then we added this plugin called Nectar. It's basically this amazing vocal assistant by iZotope. It does magic on vocals. So yeah, without that it sounds like this. And with the Nectar it sounds like this. It gives it a bit more character, a bit more dynamic range, opens it up a bit more, and gives it a bit more life. The next thing, which is probably the most important characteristic of the sound, is we added a little alto boy, which essentially is just a pitch/formant shifting plugin. So you can use anything that you like, any plugin that does the same thing. And the way we went about this plugin is we kept the formant at the normal position, and we just changed the pitch 7 semitones down, which then eventually made the sound sound like this. Without the alto boy, it's like this, and with the alto boy, cool. Then we added some delay and some reverb to make it a bit smoother. As you can see, without any effects on, it's pretty abrupt. There's no tail. So with the reverb and delay, it gives a bit more tail. However, you can see it still kind of stops. So we gave it an extreme delay, which we then automated so that it can create that tail throughout the song, which then eventually sounds like this. There we go. As you can see, it's so much smoother. Then we added another layer on top of the vocal, which sounds like this. And that's basically just the same signal duplicated with a full octave down. As you can see, I just pitched it all the way down 12 semitones to give it that low octave, and together they sound like this. Cool. Then while we were with the vocals, we added some reverse sweeps, which essentially sound like this. And the way we went about making that is we took the original vocal signal, made it short, added tons of reverb on it so it has a long tail, rendered it over, bounced it back into the project, and flipped it using the reverse function here, which then sounds like this. so that when it transitions into the vocals, it's a lot smoother. All right, then a bit more detail. We added some Foley sounds, kind of sounds like whispering in the background. You probably wouldn't even notice this in the song unless you're wearing headphones. It just gives it a bit more depth and ambiance to the whole track. And together it sounds like this. Next thing, the kick. The kick was a simple kick. We didn't do much processing on it. There's this pack by Vengeance Essential Deep House Pack, volume number 1. I would highly recommend getting that pack because the kicks there are just absolutely amazing. The processing on the kick wasn't a lot. We cut the tail off a little bit just so it's a bit shorter. We don't want it to be very boomy. Then the processing on the kick was a Neutron, which is by Isotope as well. It's a great plugin to add distortion as well as tonality and characteristics to any sound, whether it's a kick, percussion, or instruments or bass lines. And I believe I just added a preset, a kick preset, which can be found here. And I believe it was one of these. I'm not going to go through it now, but you get the idea. Then after that, I put it in mono. You can use any mono plugin or any utility plugin that allows you to shift it from stereo to mono. I know Ableton has a very great utility plugin which allows you to do exactly this. I just happen to have used this plugin for that. The next step was a little bit of EQ, roll off a little bit of the low end to give space for the sub bass, as well as boosting up a little bit of the mid-high frequencies to allow the kick to punch through the mix nicely. The other EQ is a filter which I will automate later as the song progresses. As you can see here in the beginning of the intro, the kick has no bass, and that's this filter here, which has taken all the way over the sub. And obviously I'll automate that volume of that effect throughout the song so that when it hits here, the bass comes back. Anyways, that's the kick processing. The next step was the claps. We used 4 different claps here as different layers. You don't need to use 4 different claps. We just happen to have used this because we liked the frequencies of each one, which we then cut out the frequencies that we didn't need and merged them all together and glued them all together via glue compressor to make it sound like one clap. So yeah, I'm not going to go over the clap that much. It's very basic. It sounds like this. As you can hear, there's a bit of delay on that as well. You can go wild with your clap. I mean, don't go wild with your clap. Do whatever you want. It's just, you know, it's a simple rhythm pattern that I've got here. So nothing special with that. The next step was the percussion loops. Standard percussions, you can use anything you want. We just happen to have made a loop here, which we found. Actually, no, we made this in Jason's studio, which we then had to bounce back here. So yeah, it's just a standard percussion, nothing special. And then another one that backs it up. Okay, now that was taken from a loop, which sounds like this. We like certain elements from it, especially the clanky sounds. So we obviously then chopped it up and used certain elements of that loop, like so. And that's all we used from that loop. So then together with all the drums, it sounds like this. All right, then we got some hi-hats. Also, very standard, very straightforward. I'm sure you guys all know how to make that. And then we've got some more backing shakers, which sound like this. And that I've added a endless smile to. And what an endless smile does, if I can just play it on its own, it's basically delay, phaser, reverb, all put into one, which you then increase the intensity to create a nice build-up in your songs. I've used it on my hats here, which sound like this. As you can hear, it's gradually increasing. You see there's a lot of delay. and then back to a dry signal. So that's just the Endless Smile doing that with a simple automation clip. And then, yeah, we got some more hats going on as the drop hits. And then with all the drums in the drop, it sounds like this. All right, next up, the bass line. The bass line was pretty standard. We've got this, which we've chopped up. It was from a loop, originally sounding like this. If I just play the loop here for you on its own, it sounds like something like this. Which is cool, but you know, it's not original and it's not ours and it doesn't really fit the song. So I think we just enjoyed that first initial hit of the bass line melody. Just that, and we loop that in the intro with obviously a cutoff, so it gradually increases. The processing on that, we've taken out the bass to give way for the sub bass. We've compressed it a little bit with an Ozone vintage compressor, gave it some sidechain to the kick, as well as a equalizer, just to take away some more of the high ends and some of the low ends, to give it some more tonality. That's not the main bass line. The main bass line sounds like this. I used Spire for this, and I believe it was just one preset which is pretty nice. I mean, that sounded pretty nice on its own. You can obviously mess with the cutoff throughout the song later. And the pattern we made for the bass line sounds like this. Cool. However, just to give it some more flavor and a bit of cheekiness, we added a bit of a pitch bend to it. It's very subtle. You probably won't even notice it, but it does make a difference in context, which sounds like this. It's very, very subtle. Then we have another bass, which is another layer. Okay, this is covering more of the high frequency spectrum with a bit of more of a sort of percussion sound to make it punch through the mix. And this one also has a pitch bend to it. You probably won't even notice that. And then of course we have a sub bass, which sounds like this. Now, depending on if you listen to this on very good headphones, monitors, or if you're listening on shitty ass speakers, then you probably wouldn't even hear that. So with the basses, our sub bass, the processing on it, we've taken all the high end out up to about 123 hertz, because that's the only frequency spectrum we want the sub bass to be dominant and present in. The rest of the spectrum, the other bass lines will cover, such as bass line number 1 and 5 over here. So remember, keeping in mind, if you're going to be layering sounds, no matter what sounds they are, and make sure all the layers are not covering the same frequency spectrum. Otherwise, you're going to have muddiness, phasing issues, and the rest of your elements in your song will not be able to stand out because the bass will dominate the entire frequency spectrum. Even though it might not essentially have those high frequencies that you're hearing, but it does make a difference when you clean it up via EQ. So definitely do that. Don't just have all your basses covering the bass, covering the sub frequencies. So yeah, I've got my sub bass covering the sub frequencies, and then as you can see, my bass line 1, the processing on that is basically the opposite. So I've taken away the sub, a little bit of the highs, and it's just covering that mid frequency spectrum. My bass line 5, however, I can probably tell you right now, it has no low end, and it's covering more of the high frequency spectrum, which then looks like this. Cool. And all of those are routed to a group, which then will have the same sidechain as well as a glue compressor to glue all the basses together. And with that, then there will be sidechain together so that they're all sidechain at the same velocity, so that they're not all over the place. Oh, then we got some pads, some brass stabs. These are all made via Silent, I think, or Omnisphere. As you can see, it's taking long to open. You can use any saw for this actually, so it doesn't have to be Omnisphere. We just happen to have stumbled across this one. And that's what it sounds like. Obviously a lot lower. And that's just one note, the root key, G, just playing throughout. And the processing on that is just EQ, the low end, sidechain, filter it, which will be automating throughout the song. The next pad was this very cool thing here. It sounds like a Pokemon sound, doesn't it? And I think that was also made in Omnisphere with a lot of reverb and delay as well. The next one, we've got these brass snaps. These are all samples. We've shifted obviously into the right key. So we've got that as well. And then together, it sounds like that. So it's basically just being creative, finding the right elements, finding some sounds that you think work very well together, and basically creating a melody and giving a certain part of the melody to each sound to cover, so that it's not boring and one instrument plays the whole entire melody, right? One of the biggest sort of tips that I've learned from one of my favorite DJs, Kashmir, he tends to do this a lot. He might have this beautiful melody, but then he'll have like 4 instruments covering different parts of the melody, so that's not just the one whole instrument playing all of them. It just keeps the listener more entertained and gives a bit more variation and characteristics to the sound. This was made in Vengeance. This is a plugin by this is Avenger by Vengeance, and the pad is this. And you can actually make that on anything. You can, because that's just a standard LFO. If you want, I can quickly show you how to make it from scratch. We can use Silent for it. So if I just put the initial preset on, bring this down an octave, bring the filter down. Alright, and then at the LFO section, you would want to put the cutoff here, because you want to affect the cutoff. Bring this cutoff down a little bit. There, now you got that wobbling effect. Now you just got to tweak it up to see where that little sweet spot is. Obviously, that's a lot more of a pretty synth with a lot of effects on, but this is just a standard sound. So I'm just going to show you how you can get that effect, that wobbling effect. You can use any sound essentially to do this. So we just happen to have used Omnisphere for that one. Alright, and that's basically it. And then altogether, I guess it sounds like this. I hope this was nice of a tutorial for you guys, and I hope it made sense. I'm sorry if I did rush through it and I didn't cover a lot of the things that you would like me to cover. Please let me know if there's anything specific you'd like me to cover, or if you'd like me to cover the first song and the second song of the EP. I'll be more than happy to do that. This was my first time making a tutorial, so thanks for watching this far with me in the video, and yeah, I hope you learned something. And thank you for the support I've been getting on the EP so far. I've got so much more music coming out, so please stay tuned and stay safe. Enjoy your time with your loved ones and be happy. See you guys later.